Shabbat Shalom. We have come to a pretty important time, which is the end of the month of Shabbat and the beginning of the month of Adar. Adar is the glorious month. That's what Adar means. It's like glorious or magnificent. And it's a special Shabbat, actually two special Shabbats. Shabbat Shekalim, which is the Sabbath for shekels, when the half shekel was collected. And it's the Shabbat Chodesh, which means Sabbath of the moon, but it's really the Sabbath of the new moon. Because in not too long from now is going to be the first of Nisan, which is next month. Nisan, it was the first time God ever gave a mitzvah in the Bible. And it's God pointing to the moon and telling Moshe, see, this is the first month. This is the first moon for you. All right, so pretty important time, and we have come to the last in a series of 6 Shabbats in Shabbat, which is a pretty important time. And this is Mishpatim, which means judgments. It's the first time when it's actually, there are 50, I believe it's 56 mitzvot in this passage. There's a lot of mitzvot in this passage. And God had just come to Mount Sinai. It was a revelation of Mount Sinai. The Jewish people met God face to face, and then immediately said, go away, we don't want to have anything to do. We don't want to see that, we don't want to hear it. You go do it, Moshe. We talked about that last week. And so Moshe was up on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, and he came back down on the 17th of Tammuz. And so this is while he's up on the mountain, what we're going to read today. Moshe is up on the mountain receiving the Mishpatim, which is judgments. There are a lot of them. I have not listed all 56, I believe it is. Either 54 or 56 of them, but I got a lot of them. And the reason I've listed most of them and written all of these out, is because we're going to go back and look at them through the lens of the 10 words, not 10 commandments. There's no such thing as 10 commandments. That's a totally different word. Besides, there is no word commandment in the Bible. It's set up things or establishments. But it doesn't say that in Hebrew. It says 10 things or 10 words. Every single time it says it. So we're going to go, and we're going to read these first, then we're going to go back, and we're going to look at them through the lens of the 10 words. Now, these are the mishpatim, or judgments, you are to set before them. If you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve for 6 years. On the 7th, he shall leave as a free person. So we're going to go, which of the 10 words is that? If a man sells his daughter as a female slave, she is not to go free as male slaves do. If she's displeasing in the eyes of her master, he shall let her be redeemed. If he designates her for his son, he shall do according to the custom of daughters. If he takes to himself another woman, so now there's 2 wives, he may not reduce the first one's food, clothing, and conjugal rights. Now, food, clothing, and conjugal rights are the 3 things that are given to a woman when they get married. The ketubah, the marriage contract that we make in a Jewish wedding, is not for the man. The man has no rights. It's for the woman. And it promises her her rights. Her rights are food, clothing, and conjugal rights. And by the way, conjugal rights is sex. But if he will not do these 3 for her, she shall go free. So which one of the 10 is that? He who strikes someone so that he dies shall certainly be put to death. If someone is enraged against his neighbor, that's in the heart. Remember, Yeshua said, one who is angry in his heart enough to kill has already committed murder. That's what this says. It says it straight up. It wasn't Yeshua adding something or making something different than Torah. It says it right here. If someone is enraged against his neighbor, that's in the heart, so as to kill him in a cunning way, you are to take him even from my altar to be put to death. That's obviously murder. Do no murder. Lo tirtzach. Do no murder. One who strikes his father or his mother shall certainly be put to death. Which one is that? One who kidnaps someone, whether he sells him or found in his possession, shall be put to death. I'll tell you what, let's do these now. We're going to do them as we go through them. I'm assuming you know the 10 words. The first one is, you shall have no other gods before me. One God. The second one is, you shall do no idolatry. Don't create any idols. Number 3 is, I'm picturing in my head the pictures. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God vainly, in vanity, for yourself. Number 4, it looks like a chair, an upside-down chair. Shabbat, resting. You shall keep Shabbat. You shall observe Shabbat. Number 5, the top, a 5 looks like a rectangle and a circle, and the rectangle is a man and the circle is a woman. That's mother and father. You shall honor your mother and father. By the way, my wife taught me these many years ago. Because she just saw them in her head and she told us about them. Number 6, it looks like a gun if you turn it sideways. You shall do no murder. Number 7, if you turn it sideways, looks like a bed. No adultery. Number 8, it looks like kind of like a money bag, only it's closed on the top. So like like small on the top and a big circle on the bottom. Looks like a money bag. You shall not steal. Number 9, looks like a telephone, sort of. Well, you don't know what that means. I don't mean a cell phone. I mean a telephone. You know, the ones you go like this with that we don't have anymore. So it looks like kind of like a telephone. So you shall not bear false witness. You don't speak, against people. You don't do lashon hara. You don't say things against people. And number 10 is, you shall not covet. Can't remember what the picture of that is. I just remember that one. You shall not covet. So let's go back and we'll read these and put them in context of the 10 words. Why? Because the 10 words are not 10 commandments. The 10 words, which were given in last week's Torah portion, they're kind of like subject headings or chapters. And all of the 613 mitzvot fall under these headings. First one, if you buy a Hebrew slave, you shall serve 6 years, and on the 7th he shall go free. Why? Because it's a picture of the big Shabbat. It's a picture of the day of the Lord, the kingdom, that for 6,000 years man will be enslaved, and then in the 7th millennium, from the year 6001 to the year 7000, it will be God's Shabbat, God's day, and the whole world will go free. The second one, if a man sells his daughter as a female slave, she is not to go free as the male slaves. If she is displeasing in the eyes of her master, he shall let her be redeemed. If he designates her for his son. So this is about taking a wife and then taking another wife, and you can't get rid of the first wife. You have to treat her just as good as the second one. This is about adultery. I'm not going to go into adultery very much, or divorce, but in Judaism it's pretty simple. You just, you treat your wife good for the duration. And if you don't, she can divorce you. It's not the man divorces the wife. The wife may get a get, which is a bill of divorce, from the man. This is about adultery. Next one, he who strikes someone so that he dies shall certainly be put to death. This is obviously no murder. The next one, he who strikes his father or his mother shall certainly be put to death. This is obviously murder. No, it's not. This is obviously, you shall honor your father and your mother. So if you break the honor, or the kavod in Hebrew, the glory, if you not just don't give your parents glory, but you actively make war on them, you're to be put to death for breaking this picture of honoring your father, which is God, and your mother. Who's your mother? If God is your father, who's your mother? Mary. No, wait, that's not right. The Ruach HaKodesh, the female aspect of God, the Holy Spirit. Now remember, these are pictures. They do have real world consequences, but they are pictures. The next one, he who curses, if people have a quarrel and one strikes the other and he doesn't die but is confined to bed, if he gets up and walks around, then he who struck him shall pay for his loss of time and care until he is completely healed. Now we're talking about damages and court cases, and it gets a little murky. Which one of the 10 is this? This is about, anything about money and damages is about money. It's about greed. It's you shall not covet. That's what coveting is. You want what somebody else has. And if you injure them, you got to take care of them. So the whole setup of Israel, the whole entire world that God is trying to create in Israel, is a world in which it's right side up, not upside down and backwards, right side up and forwards from where the world is now, and always has been, which is I want, I take, and I don't care what happens to you. Well, Israel's not allowed to be like that. I can want and I can take, but there's going to be consequences where I end up taking care of that person that I hurt. So this is about coveting. If someone strikes his male or female slave with a rod and the slave dies at his hand, he shall be punished. If, however, the slave survives a day or two, no vengeance shall be taken. Why? It's his property. Now please don't picture the disgusting American slavery. That is not how God set this up in Israel. It's totally right side up and forwards from the way the world is now. Gentiles enslave one another. Jews are not allowed to do that. Jews are not allowed to enslave anybody. But you have it's kind of like an indentured servant, where you are served for 6 years, and then in the 7th they go free. It's that simple. But if somebody is poor, they sell themselves to their brother because they can't get a job, they got no money. Okay, they'll become an indentured servant, and you take care of them. Not like American slavery. So what is this about? It's not about murder. I mean, he didn't have any intention in his heart to murder. So again, this is about money, about damages, about coveting, about wanting, getting. If people struggle with each other and strike a pregnant woman so that she gives birth prematurely, either she has a miscarriage, well, yeah, that's what it is. She has a miscarriage, but there is no injury, they shall certainly be fined as the woman's husband may demand. So this is not murder. This is not murder. Abortion, as much as you may want to think of it as murder, may or may not be murder. It depends on the heart and the intention. If it is like, this is people that aren't trying to abort a child. This is people that are fighting, they hit a woman in the belly accidentally and she miscarries. Now, if somebody, because of their own greed and selfishness, go out and kill their baby, yeah, that's murder. This is not murder. This is about damages, so it's about coveting. They shall certainly be fined as the woman's husband may demand. He shall pay as the judges say, but if there's no injury, then you shall appoint as a penalty. Now look at this. This is where this phrase comes from. This is about miscarriaging from an accidental strike on the woman's belly. And this is where the phrase appears, you shall appoint, excuse me, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. So they're fighting, they're struggling, a pregnant woman is nearby, she's saying, stop, stop, that's my husband. And one of the guys accidentally kicks her in the belly. And not only that, she gets her eye, 10% or 15% of her sight gets damaged. Because he throws his hand out and hits her in the eye. So not only is the baby miscarried, but now there's a damage to her. And this could apply to anybody, not just a woman in this situation, but to anybody, anytime, anywhere. And she loses 15% of her sight. So if we look at the Bible like Christians look at the Bible, that means I have to go to that person and hit them just at the right angle with the right force to take away 15% of that person's sight. Doesn't that sound stupid? Because it is. It's stupid. It makes no logical sense, and it is, not only that, it's impossible. So you're in a fight because you want something, and somebody gives you a kidney punch, and it damages one of your kidneys, but only about 50% of the kidney is damaged. So then what do? Hunt the guy down and give him exactly the right punch in the kidney to remove 15%? It's impossible to remove exactly the same, to cause exactly the same kind of damage. It's impossible. So what in the world is this talking about? Life for life, eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, an eye for an eye. Everybody says an eye for an eye, and they have no idea what they're saying. It's about money. It's about damages, money. That only happens if you have court cases, and that only happens if you have shoftim, judges. And a mishpat, a judgment, is given by the shofet, the judge, in a shoftim, in a mishpat, a court case. It's all the same word. So what I'm telling you is this. If you look at the Bible as a book of laws, you are lost reading the Bible. It is an illogical, irresponsible book if you read it as a book of laws. It's foolishness. And it doesn't work on any level. Eventually it all falls apart. But if you look at it as a book of pictures and types and shadows and repeating patterns, it makes perfect sense. So what was God doing? God was creating a culture that there will be wise people that can make judges according to the Torah and assign damages and make people pay, so that there's a culture that looks like God's culture, which isn't here yet, which is coming. Next one. If someone strikes the eye of his male or female slave and destroys it, he shall let the slave go free on account of the eye. If he knocks out a tooth of his slave, he shall let the slave go free on account of the tooth. What's this about? Remember, the slave or the indentured servant is his property for that period of time. So this is about damages. It's about money. It's about ownership. And this, too, is about coveting. Anything about damages or money is under number 10, which is you shall not covet. Let's skip down to, let's read this one about the ox, because it's a big one. If an ox gores a man or a woman to death, so is this murder? Can an ox have murder in his heart? Is that possible? If an ox gores a man or a woman to death, the ox shall certainly be stoned. Well, it sounds like, if you kill a man, you die. If an ox kills a man, the ox dies. Sounds like murder. He shall let, the ox shall certainly be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten. So in other words, it's ownerless. Nobody gets the ox, the meat. But the owner of the ox will go unpunished. If, however, an ox was previously in the habit of goring, and its owner was warned, okay, now it's talking about the human. The owner was warned, and it kills a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner will also be put to death. So it is about murder. Why? Because the ox is an animal, but the human has a soul and a spirit and has control over the animal and knows that it did this in the past. And yet he didn't tie that thing up and protect his fellow brothers and sisters. He murdered. He murdered. In essence, he murdered. So this is about murder. You shall not murder. If a ransom is demanded, that means money, damages, then he shall give for the redemption of his life whatever is demanded. So not only does he die, but he has to pay damages before they stone him. So this is also about coveting. This is two different of the 10 words. It's about you shall not murder, you shall not covet. All right, let's go to if someone steals an ox or a sheep. Oh wait, let's back up. The one that said if you steal, kidnapping, if you kidnap a person, I think we got to that. If you kidnap a person, then you are to be killed. What is that? Is that murder? No, that's stealing. You shall not steal. It's about stealing a human. Stealing a human, kidnapping is stealing a human being. And the penalty is death. All right, so if somebody steals an ox or a sheep, let's find out if it's the same. He shall pay 5 oxen for the ox and 4 sheep for the sheep. So this is not the same. This is about damages. If the thief is caught while breaking in and struck so that he dies, there's no guilt for bloodshed. So, you defend your house, somebody breaks in, a thief, and you kill him. Defending your house, there's no penalty for that. Why? Because you're defending your house. It's self-defense. And remember, the guy's there to steal. So it's about coveting. The thief shall make restitution. If he owns nothing, then he's to be sold for his theft. If what he stole is found alive in his possession, he shall pay double. So it's always about payment, about damages, and this is coveting. If someone lets a field or vineyard be grazed bare, and lets his animal loose so that it grazes in somebody else's field, why would he do that? Because he wants. Yeah, but that's their field. Yeah, but I want my animal fed. Well, that's coveting. He shall make restitution from the best of his own field and the best of his vineyard. If fire breaks out and spreads to thorn bushes, and stacked grain, or the standing grain, or the field itself is consumed, the one who started the fire must make restitution. This is about coveting. Even starting a fire and not, even if you do it by accident, that's your grain, and then it's somebody else's grain. So, unfortunately, even though it's by accident, maybe, it's still coveting. It's still wanting. I don't know exactly how, but that's what it is. I'm more the kind of person who would be like, yeah, but he didn't do it on purpose. Doesn't matter. It's still coveting. If someone gives his neighbor money or goods to keep, and it's stolen from the neighbor's house, if you catch the thief shall pay double. Coveting. If someone gives his neighbor a donkey or any animal to keep for him, and it dies or is injured while no one is looking, an oath before the Lord shall be taken by the two of them that he has not laid a hand on his neighbor's property, and his owner shall accept it. But if it actually is stolen from him, he shall make restitution. This is not about damages. This is about, I am the Lord your God. This is number one. Why? Because they made an oath before the Lord. All they have is words, and they're swearing. They're saying, we're told many times in the Bible, you are to swear by the Lord your God. In other words, you're to tell the truth all the time. And you're not to lie. So if you make a vow, if you swear before the Lord, this is number one. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. I know it sounds kind of weird, but that's what it is. Let's go down to if a man seduces a virgin. If a man seduces a virgin who is not betrothed and has sex with her, he must pay a dowry for her to be his wife. If her father refuses to give her to him, he shall pay money equal to the dowry for virgins. So what is this? Is this about damages? About money? About coveting? Yeah, it's about coveting. I want that woman. I took her. Well, you're going to pay for her. But it's also adultery. Any lust is adultery. Any lust. It doesn't matter. It could be, you may not even act on it. It's still adultery in the heart. Remember, the 10 words are not about laws. These are not laws. These are about the human heart and how to live on earth in a way that's different, in a way that's like the kingdom. And so this is 2 of them. This is about damages, coveting, but it's also about adultery. You shall not allow a sorceress to live. What about that one? Kill all witches, sorcerers, necromancers, etc. You shall not allow them to live. What is this? This is also, you shall have no other God before me. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other God before me. Because that's what necromancy sounds like a silly word. Consulting demons and Ouija boards and, talking to demons and the power of the other side, Hasatan, all of that is worshiping another God. That's all it is. He who has sexual intercourse with an animal must be put to death. What is that? That's adultery. Any kind of sex with anybody but your wife or your husband is adultery. Period. End of story. Sorry, but it is. And that's husband or wife. That's husband or wife. If you're not married and you're having sex with a woman or a man and you're living together, that's adultery. Sorry, but it is. Biblically, I'm just talking biblically. May not be in our culture, but biblically that is adultery. Let's go down to, you shall not curse God. You shall not curse God, nor curse a ruler of your people. Why? Because a ruler of your people, the Jews, is a Jew. And he's over the Jews. Why? Because he's a picture of God. So you shall not curse God, and you shall not curse the picture of God. This is not about American politics. It's about the Jewish people in the culture that God designed and gave to the Jewish people. Period. If you want to apply that to your life, hey, go for it. But that's not what it's about. So what is this? You shall not curse God, you shall not curse a ruler of your people. Picture of God. I am the Lord your God. It's that simple. You shall not hold back your entire harvest. The firstborn of your sons you shall give to me. Do the same with your oxen and your sheep. It shall be with its mother for 7 days, and on the 8th day you shall give it to me. This is two different of the 10 words. Number 1, you shall not steal. If you hold back your tithe, if you hold back your offerings, if you hold back your vows, if you hold back anything that you are supposed to give to God, you are stealing it. It's stealing, pure and simple. Like it says in Malachi, will a man rob God? Well, then bring me your tithes. Rob. It uses the word stealing, rob. All right, and it's also, as far as the firstborn animal, it's about Shabbat. All animals shall keep one Shabbat, and then you can do with it what you want to do with it. The last one, you shall be holy to me. Therefore you shall not eat of flesh torn to pieces in the field. Throw it to the dogs. What is that? You shall be holy to me. Sounds like I am the Lord your God. Therefore you shall not eat the flesh of an animal that's been ripped to shreds by animals. Like say you come across a perfectly good ox carcass and you want the meat from it. And it was killed by wolves or something like that. They kind of ripped into it. Well, it wasn't killed, it wasn't slaughtered properly by a shochet, by a kosher butcher, a priest, or a Levite, and the blood spilt on the altar to turn it into a sacrifice to God. So you're not supposed to eat that. Why? You can throw it to the dogs. Why? Because I am the Lord your God. This is I am the Lord your God. Anything that just kind of says this, do this to stay holy, that's I am the Lord your God. All of those fall under I am the Lord your God. Every one of them. I told you, I didn't even write all 54 or 56. You shall not give a false report. What's that? The telephone. That means you shall not bear false witness. You shall not be a malicious witness. You shall not follow the crowd in doing wrong. You shall not. This is hard to do. Why? Because of computers and cell phones and Facebook and Twitter and all the other stupid social media things. Because of propaganda. The crowd is formed by the propaganda that's given. Let's talk about Trump for a moment, shall we? So all the foolishness of people trying to impeach Trump, it's just foolishness. It's all for show. But they created, by propaganda, a crowd. And people think they're doing the right thing. Instead of being able to have some third-party perspective, being out of the crowd and looking at them and saying, wait a minute, what you just said doesn't make sense. What you just said is irresponsible. What you just said contradicted the last thing you said. What you just said, didn't you say the same thing before? What you just said was contradicted by 50 of your own people, etc. Without third-party perspective, you are part of the crowd. And I guarantee you that crowd is going to do wrong. They're going to do evil. That's why it's a crowd. That's why it's a mob. You shall not follow the crowd in doing wrong. You shall not favor a poor person in a dispute. Now, why does it link that with the other stuff? Because you shall not bear false witness is witness. Witness. Like, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help me God. By God. Witness, like in a court case. You have to tell the truth, whether you're in a court case or you're not in a court case. You've got to tell the truth. And in a court case, if you're not telling the truth, you're going to favor either the one guy or the other guy, or one girl or the other girl. That's just the way it is. And most people who are wrong-hearted and wrong-minded will favor the poor person, not the rich person. In America, it's hard to see this, but in Israel it's easy to see because everything is kind of, over the top in Israel. Here, everything's kind of subtle and under the surface. But most people, given the choice, when their heart is wrong, they will not favor a normal person or a rich person, a person who's got money. They will immediately go for the underdog. We're not to do that. We're to stay completely even-minded. And I don't care if they got money or not. I don't care. I don't care. All I care about is the truth. Hard to do. Almost impossible to do with social media. Almost impossible. That's another story. Let's skip down to you shall not oppress. You shall not oppress a stranger, since you yourselves know the feelings of a stranger. For you also were strangers in the land of Egypt. What is that? You shall not oppress a stranger. It means get money from them. Why? Because you know what it feels like to be a stranger. This is about coveting. This is about wanting. You know what it's like to be oppressed. So don't oppress somebody else. Don't want from them. You know what it feels like. You shall not covet. Let's skip down to the second to the last one. No, the third to the last one. 3 times a year. 3 times a year you shall celebrate a chag to me, a feast to me. You shall keep Chag HaMatzah, Feast of Unleavened Bread. Also you shall keep Chag HaKatzir, the Feast of Gathering, of Harvest, of the Bikurim, the first fruits of your labors. That's Shavuot. Also Chag HaKatzir at the end of the year. That's Sukkot, the Feast of Ingathering at the end of the year. Sorry, that's not Katzir, that's Osef. Chag HaOsif. At the end of the year. 3 times a year, all your males shall appear before the Lord God. What is this? This is you shall keep Shabbat. All of the festivals, all of them, are a Shabbat. They're a Shabbaton. All 7 are a Shabbaton, a high Sabbath. Why are they called a Sabbath? Because they're a picture of the day of the Lord, the 7th day, the kingdom. And so this is about, even though it ends, because I am the Lord your God, you shall appear before the Lord your God. You could say it's 2. You could say it's Shabbat plus I am the Lord your God. You could. But this is very definitely Shabbat. And now the last one. You shall bring the choice first fruits of your soil into the house of the Lord your God. You are not to boil a young goat in the milk of its mother. No cheeseburgers. No cheeseburgers. For you, yeah. That has nothing to do with this. 3 times the Bible says you are not to boil a young goat in the milk of its mother. Now, aside from this being a picture, which of the 10 words is it? Well, it's linked with, you shall bring the choice first fruits, the Bikurim, of your soil into the house of the Lord your God. And remember, tithing, vows, offerings, anything that you owe to God, that you bring to the Lord your God, is about stealing. You shall not steal. Why? It doesn't belong to us. It belongs to God. So don't steal it. You are not to boil a young goat in the milk of its mother is stealing. Now there's a big story behind this, but I'll try to make it as simple as I can. You are not to take the baby from the mommy. You cannot steal the life of a young one from its covering, protecting, mothering source. That is stealing. It doesn't belong to you. Now, that's about birds. It talks about that. You shall not take the baby from the mother bird. It's called the smallest commandment in the Torah. This is the same thing. You shall not take the milk from the mommy and take the life of that baby and then boil it in the mommy's milk. It's basically the same picture. This is stealing. It does not belong to you. Doesn't mean don't eat cheeseburgers. It means you shall not steal the life of the baby from the mommy. It's cruel. It's heartless. It's horrible. And there's a huge story behind that. Something that the Romans and the Babylonians literally did. But suffice it to say, this is about stealing. All right, now let's talk about the rationale of the mitzvot. Why? Because I want to brainwash you. I want to wash your brains. Your brains are dirty, and I want to wash your brains. I want to brainwash. I'm being facetious, but not so much. Because I do want to change the way you think if you're thinking like most people think, which is wrong. Most people think, and Jews and Gentiles, Christians and Orthodox Jews and everybody. I'm not the only one who thinks like this, by the way. It's not me against the world. I'm just telling you what the sages and the ancients of Israel came to, and I've gone back to the root and I dug it up, and that's what I believe. So you can believe it or not. But this is what I'm trying to get across, is that the Bible is not a book of laws. It's not. If you have inside of you, you read the Bible and it says, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. Like in the picture over there of the wise son, lo tirtzach, lo tana'af, lo tadnov, lo ta'as. If you have these in your head, thou shalt not, you're already lost. You're already reading the Bible wrong. Because you're thinking God is commanding thou shalt not. You're already lost to it. You're already lost to the message. You're already lost in this thicket, this forest of stuff to try to look through to figure out what in God's name is he trying to say. You're lost like a little kid in a forest. However, if you can weed through all the foolishness that you've been taught about the Bible being a book of laws and try to look past it, you can figure out a different way that's more clear, and it will give you shalom, give you peace. So let's talk about the rationale. Why did God give mitzvot? Because they're commandments that we are to obey. You're done. You're gone. You're lost. There's a rationale behind it. A Jew is expected to attain such a high degree of perfection where his entire life is based on absolute obedience to God's will, so that his fulfillment even of the so-called rational mitzvot, the ones that you can figure out, the mishpatim, is motivated solely by his desire to fulfill God's will, and not by his own, quote, approval or consent. Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson cracked the code of Jethro for me last week, said the only thing that I thought was wise in all of the sages' words, and this was in like 1930 or something like that, just brilliantly showed what Jethro was adding to the Torah. And it's hell and gone from what most people believe it is. If you didn't see that teaching from last week, you should see it. You'll see what I'm talking about. Absolutely brilliant what he came up with. Now, he has fallen completely short. This is the stupidest thing you can believe. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because all the rabbis said this. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about when we get to the word chokim, a chok. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about there are mitzvot that we can figure out. You shall keep Shabbat. You shall bring your bikurim, your first fruits. You shall not murder. You can figure that stuff out. You shall do this and do that, and these are the damages for it. Okay, it's rational. But what about you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk? Why? What about you shall kill a red cow and beat its bones into ashes and put it in water and sprinkle that water on somebody who's been affected by death, like they've touched a bone? Why? It's crazy. So what he's saying is that those are chokim, which are totally irrational on the surface, and so a Jew should be at a level to where it doesn't matter if it's logical or illogical. It's based on absolute obedience to God's will. Maybe you believe that. If you do, you're in good company, but it's wrong. It's absolutely not what God ever said. I'm going to show you in the Hebrew. I'm not going to just say things. I'm going to prove it to you that in the Hebrew itself, for these words, like chokim, it's just the opposite of illogical. All right. So there are different kinds of mitzvot. One of them is Mishpatim, name of our Torah portion. Well, let's look at what the wise son said. What does he say? This is during the Passover Seder. We read this. There's a wise son, there's a wicked son. I just happen to have both here. But the wise son is the one we're going to look at. What does he say? He says, what are the edut, testimonies, the chokim, the statutes, and the mishpatim, the judgments, which the Lord your God has established for you? Now that's a lot. That's a mouthful. Why would a kid say, wait a minute, what are the chokim? What are the edut? What are the mishpatim that the Lord your God gave you? And why did he give them to you? Okay? That's a wise person. In other words, the wise kid, and it's a child. A Jewish child. Why? Why did God give you all of these? Well, Menachem Schneerson says, just to be an obedient person. Let's be in complete obedience. All right, fine. That's great. You want to do that, do that. But it's not going to give you an answer. It's a circular reasoning. You start at point A, and you end at point A, and then you come back to point A, and then you go around to point A, and then you continue getting back to point A, and you never get anywhere. Because, yes, sir, I will obey. That doesn't give you any understanding. And God gave the Bible to give us understanding of Him, and understanding of all spiritual things, not to obey stuff. So he says, what are the testimonies, the statutes, and the judgments which the Lord your God has established for you? You are to tell him all the details of the Pesach. That takes all night. Tell him all the details of Pesach, even to the last, that nothing should be added after the Pesach sacrifice. All right. There's another quote by the Tanya, great sage from about the 1700s to the early 1800s. It's a huge book, the Tanya. Huge book. The rationales of the mitzvot have not been revealed. Whoa! The rationales of the mitzvot have not been revealed, for they are beyond reason and understanding. I'm with you so far, Tanya man. Also, in those instances in which there has been revealed and explained a certain reason, which is apparently comprehensible. It's apparently comprehensible to us. We think we can figure this out. I think I get it. This is not the ultimate reason, for within it is contained an inner sublime wisdom that is beyond reason and understanding. He is not saying what Rabbi Schneerson is saying. He's saying what I say. He's saying that the only way that we can understand what is incomprehensible to us is to have a picture. And there's something deeper in that picture. The thing, the picture, the thing, I'll say law or commandment, is not the thing in and of itself. There's something inside of it that's much more deep and sublime and magnificent that we're supposed to get at. Well, how do we get at it? By doing and then having it talk to us. And we'll get at it. But if we just do it because God told us to do it, and we are going to be obedient children and obey the Lord and do as He has said, you'll never get that inner wisdom. Never. Because that's not what you're looking for. As Eddie Money wisely said, you can't get what you want till you know what you want. That's true. You can't get what you want until you know what you want. Well, if you want to obey the Lord, you're never going to want that inner wisdom because you just want to obey the Lord. Okay, you got your prize already. Done. You got your pat on the butt. You got your gold star. You've already been paid what you went for. So don't think you're going to receive anything else. You're not. You are a nice little obedient child, and so God will treat you like a nice little obedient child. Good boy, good girl. We're done. We're done here. Let me go find somebody who wants to know me. Sorry, but that's the way it is. That is the truth. And it's hard to hear, it's hard to understand, but that's the way it is. God never said obey, and He never said command. All right? So here's the different words for, quote, laws in the Bible. The big one is Torah. That's the overarching word that covers basically everything. And it comes from yara, which means to pour, to rain, a dart, a spear. In other words, something that's very pointed. It means to teach, to throw out something, information. And it literally means instruction. It does not mean law in any way, shape, or form. Not in its root. And by the way, when I look at Hebrew words, I always go to the 3-letter root. Why? Because I want to know what the original says. I don't care about the meanings nowadays. I don't care about the modern translation. I don't care about the offshoots of the word, unless it's like pertinent. But what I want to know is the original 3-letter root and what God put it there for. Why did He stick that word in there the way He did? What does it mean to Him? Not to us, to Him. And so the word Torah means instruction. It's that simple. But by implication, it means scriptures. Like by the time you come to the 1st century, the New Testament, they would just say law, Torah. What's translated as law in the New Testament, foolishly. They would just say Torah, and it meant Judaism. The whole Jewish world. Because Torah means Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. Law, writings, or prophets and writings. The law, the prophets, and the writings. Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim. All right, so if you have a Jewish Bible, it'll say Tanakh. Tanakh. Why Tanakh? Because it's an acronym meaning Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim. So this is Torah. But it's not just Torah. It's the whole Old Testament. So that's why we say Torah to mean Judaism. All right, now, underneath that is a smaller category, which is the mitzvot. There's 613 mitzvot. Now, the word comes from Tzava. I've taught on this many, many times. This changed my life, completely changed the way I think, completely changed my life. Comes from the 3-letter root Tzava, which means to set up or establish, period. That's all it means. It carries no such word as commandment, no such word as command, no such word as charge or no force of adjuration. It simply means to set up or establish. That's all. Well, why would you set up or establish something? So you can look at it. But there it is. I see it. That's all. That's all tzavah is. And the word mitzvah means from set up, or because set up. We call it commandments. We shouldn't, but people do. It's an established or set up thing. But this is like social justice. In Judaism, social justice things. All the laws that are about social justice, about creating that culture of kindness and ethics and morality instead of immorality and no ethics and doing whatever the hell you want to do and getting whatever the hell you want to get. Well, ethics and morality are the opposite of that, and so is social justice. It's turning your heart to care about others and to try to get them into your Jew world where there is kindness and social justice and ethics and morality. Not trying to take your Jew world to them, which is what they do in America, in American Judaism. Now, under the mitzvot are 4 different words for the laws, quote, laws. Mishpatim, which is the name of our Torah portion, edut, chokim, and pikudim. So, obviously we know mishpatim is judgments, from the word mishpat, which means judgment, justice, a legal suit, a verdict, a sentence, a decree. Anything legal is the word mishpat. Now this is like laws that are quantified or categorized. In other words, stuff we can figure out with our head. It's a way to correct and discipline. And you may not like it, but back then they would hit with, when I say back then, I mean up until very recently in America. They still do this in Torah observant places in the world, not in America, but they would whip with stripes in the synagogue, and that's discipline. And they would discipline and correct with money. And you'd actually have a court case in the synagogue with a Beit Din, house of judgment, a Beit Din, house of judgment, but it's also a Beit Mishpat, a house of judges, Mishpatim. And they would, give damages and do court cases. So you'd have, it's about servitude, it's about damages, it's about land use, it's about weights and measures, which is a big one, and economy and agriculture, which is all based on weights and measures. So this is all the cultural, how do we live? How then shall we live? How do we live now? And how do we make decisions? That's mishpatim. Now, there's edut, which is translated as testimonies. Why? Because an ed means a witness, and this is literally like a witness. Like I saw Doug steal that candy from that candy dish, walk over here and pop it in his mouth. I never did that, says Doug, his face turning red. I never did that, and I am a witness, and I saw it happen. Okay, so anybody who's a witness, who sees or hears, is obligated and commanded, if that's what you believe, to speak the truth. Whether it's a court case or not, you tell the truth. This is an edah. Now look at what the word edah means. Edut is testimony, witness, evidence. An ed is a witness or a period of time. Like an ed is a period of time. Like a woman's menstrual cloth in the Bible is called beged ed, which means garment of times. A period, a time period. That's where they get the word period from. It's a beged ed, a garment of time, a period, which is interesting. Edah means a congregation. Why? Because we witness one another. That doesn't happen in church. What I mean is, American Hellenistic Christianity, for the most part, is set up in rows. And you see the back of a person's head, so you're not embarrassed. And nobody ever asks you a question straight to your face. Where were you last night? Why don't people do that? They do it in Judaism, in a synagogue. Where were you last night? What were you doing? Why did you? I called you. You didn't answer your phone. Where were you? You don't do that in church? My God, that's horrible. And that's a very, very, very low level of what happens in an Edah, a congregation, a group of people who witness one another's lives. They see, they speak, they hear. That isn't true what you're saying, because you said this. You would never hear that in a church. Never. It's too confrontational. But an Edah, a congregation, is supposed to be made up of witnesses. Something to think about. An Edah, well, let me say it this way. When the king was crowned as a king, in the Bible, he was given edut, which is this word. And it's like bracelets that he would wear on his body. That was the edut. It's so Edah also means an adornment. So it was like an adorning thing. But it was more than that. It was a picture of his authority. And also he received a scroll that described his duties and his limitations. And this is what we're going to receive in the kingdom. Everybody's going to receive their own Edah. Their own Edah. And this is a testimony. You might read it as testimony, like King Saul received the testimony. Or King Josiah was made king and he received the Edah. He received the testimony. Well, that's what this is. Now, these are the, quote, laws that commemorate or represent something, like tefillin. Why do we do tefillin? Put boxes on your head. You want to worship God? You want to get brownie points with God? Put a leather box on your head and on your arm. Oh, it makes God so happy. That's nuts. But it's not, because it represents something. It's not the thing in and of itself. It represents something magnificent. So that and Shabbat makes no logical sense. Think about it. We don't do Shabbat. We don't keep Shabbat. I don't care who you are. You do not keep Shabbat. We can't. It's impossible to keep Shabbat now. Even in Israel, they don't keep Shabbat. And the reason I say it is this. Think about this. You're not to start a fire on Shabbat. That means you can't cook. You cannot heat your house. And you can have no light to see anything by. That sounds like prison to me. That's totally illogical. And yet, because it represents something much more magnificent, it's an Edah, it's a witness, it talks to us. All right, matzah makes no sense. A lulav, waving a piece of fruit and 3 branches, that's crazy talk. But it represents something. So this is an Edah. It's a witness. It speaks. It testifies. So, how is that a commandment? If it's supposed to talk and testify and witness to you, and you're doing it, yes, sir, I'm going to be a good boy, a good girl, I'm going to do your word. Sorry, that's not an Edah. An Edah has to talk. And if you ain't listening, it's got nobody to talk to. But that's why it's there, to talk to you. Now, here's the big one, the chokim. So, the chokim, or chukim, depends on the word that it comes before or after. The chokim, it means statutes. It's actually written, translated in the Bible as statutes. This, look at what it means. Established or definite. Established or definite? I thought this was something that we couldn't understand. So like, of all of them, this is the one that is clearest to be something that we are supposed to get. Not something we can't get, something we're supposed to get. Why? Because it comes from the word chakak, which means to engrave or chop into. Like to engrave, to chop a pattern, a picture into. So if all the quote laws or commandments, this is the one that's supposed to be the most clear and definite and established and obvious to us. Established or definite. Chok, hakak, to engrave, to chop into. So I always picture somebody with a hatchet or an axe chopping into the ground a big picture of something. And everybody stands around and looks at it and goes, I get it. Now I get it because I can see it. And yet, all of Judaism says, you are to keep the chokim because you cannot understand it. That doesn't mean it's not right. It means that you can't understand it. And you are to keep it anyway with perfect obedience. It's wrong. It's a wrong way to look at the Bible. I'm sorry, but it is. But what in Judaism they say is an incomprehensible law that is obeyed without knowledge. Those words just drive me crazy. It's evil. This is evil. To say that there are incomprehensible laws that are to be obeyed without knowledge. If that doesn't bother you, I mean, my heart screams out, I want to know God. Why the hell would I want to do a chok? I want to know God. Now, if you have that same heart, you have to listen. You have to do the thing and then listen to it. Let it talk to you. Do the thing that's set up and look at it, and it'll talk to you. Do the thing that's established, and it will witness, testify, speak to you. Or else, you're under the law. You're under the curse of the law. Now, these are things that are supposedly you can't understand. Kashrut, family purity, that means like nidah, like how long a woman is unclean, how a man is unclean, and what to do about it. Family purity, when to have sex, when not to have sex, which of your family members you can have sex with. That would be none. But it has to be said, because it ain't like that in the Gentile world. They have sex with family members all the time, and not just in West Virginia, by God. Happens all the time. Sota, which is the woman caught in adultery. No, they don't know what this means. We do. We have the Holy Spirit. Pretty clear. And then the red heifer, about, beating his bones into dust and then sprinkling the water with the dust in it on somebody who's been touched by death. That makes no logical sense, but it does. It's because it's a picture. And it's not only that, it is an established and definite picture that we can look at and learn from. Now, the last one, precepts, doesn't really appear in the Torah. It only appears in the book of Psalms. Many, 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 many times in the book of Psalms. And I think it's more, Pikud is kind of like an overall statement referring to the Mishpatim and the Edut and the Chokim. Right? The word precepts is a Pikudim. I love this. I've always loved this word. I said last week I wanted to name my child Pikud. And my wife got mad at me. You ain't going to name our child Pikud. Because it sounds awful in American, by God. But it means appointed or mandated. And it comes from pakad, which means to strike upon or to strike against. In other words, to visit somebody with judgment, to visit. But it could also be visiting in a good way. You go meet somebody. You go meet them. To strike upon or against. Just you strike with each other. You get up against each other. Could mean to oversee or charge. Now, this is a principle that this one has been twisted up a little bit in Christianity. Precepts. They're big on the word precepts. Why? Because they don't keep Judaism. And so they look for like general principles. Well, we'll go with that general principle. What about kashrut? Sorry, I don't, Jesus made pigs kosher. What about family purity? Sorry, I like the way my cousin looks. Whatever. Any of the laws that Christianity has abandoned, Shabbat, you know the list. But it's A principle is how it's translated. A precept is a principle. And basically, the way it's looked at in both Christianity and Judaism is it's a principle or a rule used to influence or regulate conduct. That sounds like the Mishpatim. Correction, discipline, servitude, damages, weights and measures, economy, agriculture, land use, that sort of thing. It sounds like, Mishpatim. Also, the 10, quote, commandments are pikudim. So, that's why I say that this is a kind of a general, bigger term, pikudim. And it doesn't appear in the Torah. It only appears in the book of Psalms. All right, so these are what Judaism is comprised of. None of them are stuff that we're not supposed to understand. None of them. In fact, all of them have some meaning within it that means we're going to tell you what it is. We, being the thing itself, the Mishpatim, we're going to tell you what we're telling you. We're going to talk to you. We're going to sing to you. We're going to preach to you. We're going to show you stuff. We're going to reveal things to you. That's what Judaism is. It's a set of pictures. That's all it is. Psalm 119 is set up as an acrostic. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin. And there's usually 8. Some of them have 7 verses that are under that letter. Like this is Psalm 119, 1, Aleph. And every line starts with an Aleph. Ashrei, happy, blessed. Blessed are those who, and what I'm saying is this, that in Psalm 119, every one of the letters have these words for Torah in it. All of these words for Torah. There's 6 of them. They have all the 6 words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Torah, mitzvot, mishpatim, edut, chokim, pikudim. All these words appear in Psalm 119. Blessed are those who are perfect in the way, who walk in the Torah of the Lord. Blessed are those who observe his edah, his edut, his testimonies. They also do no injustice. They walk in his ways. You have established your pikudei, your precepts, that we keep them a lot. Oh, that my ways may be established to keep your chok. Then I will not be ashamed when I look at your mitzvah, your establishments. I'll give thanks to you with an upright heart when I learn your righteous mishpatim, mishpat, judgments. I will keep your chok. This one has chok in it twice. I will keep your chok. Don't abandon me much. A lot. All of the 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet are set up like this, and they all sing the praises of Torah, mitzvot, mishpatim, edut, chokim, and pikudim. But the church doesn't. But God's word does. So here's what I'm saying. Torah, which means instruction, it's instructions in the form of metaphors and pictures of what we cannot understand in any other way. So Torah, being that big, broad umbrella word, it's all pictures. Torah is nothing but pictures, metaphors. Mitzvot, right underneath Torah, means to set up or establish, an established or set up thing. It means to set up or establish the metaphor and the picture that speak to us and give us insight about spiritual things. Why? Because it's set up and established. That means you can look at it. It's just think of a pillar, like a big. I can't lay that down. Oh, here, like a big pillar. You get that big old pillar and you set it up and everybody looks at it and goes, I see it. And if it's got messages on it, they can see the messages. That's a mitzvah. It talks to us. It gives us insight. Now, under that is Mishpatim, Edut, Chukim, and Pikudim. A mishpat. Already said what that is. It's things that we act out, things that we do as prophecy so we can be a living model of a future, better world. We act out this world that does not yet exist. The kingdom. That's only in Judaism. That world that God gave us is for us to act out so we can be a living picture of that perfect world, whatever that perfect world is. An edut. It commemorates, it represents things that we act out that speak to us. Why speak to us? Witness, evidence, testimony, that witness and give testimony of that future better world. A chok, the big one, the one that the Jews say you cannot understand. Just the opposite. Things that we act out that clearly and definitively show us about that future better world. A pikud, how we conduct ourselves that give us an understanding of that future better world. Now, take the Torah, the mitzvot, the mishpatim, the edut, and the chukim, and the pikudim out of your life. And what do you have to teach you about that future better world? The Torah is instruction in the form of metaphors and pictures of what we cannot understand in any other way. This is what I showed this last week. This is what Tavniot is all about. Colossians 2:16 through 17 says, the kosher laws, which one is that? That's the edut. Or was that the chukim? Kosher laws. Chukim, sorry. The kosher laws, that's the chukim. The new moon, that's a mishpat. And it's something to remember, which is an edah. And the kosher laws, new moon, the Sabbath, and the festivals, they're all three edut, because they represent. Those are the shadow cast by the body, Colossians 2:16 through 17 says. The body is Messiah. The shadow is Judaism cast by the body, which is Messiah. Not the body of Christ. It's the body casting the shadow in the verse. It doesn't say the body of Christ. It just says that the shadow is Judaism and the body is Messiah. Well, the word body is referring to the shadow. It's casting the shadow. So, Torah is a set of metaphors or shadows that give us understanding of spiritual things. Mitzvot, established metaphors and pictures that speak to us and give us insight about spiritual things. They talk to us. They're established. They're set up. That's what the shadow is. It's something you can look at. You can't look at Yeshua. He ain't here. You look at the shadow and it talks to you. The mishpat is prophecy. We act out as prophecy so we can be a living model of the future better world, which is the same thing. We do the physical because it preaches to us about the future. Now in this case, it's not the Messiah, it's a future better world. The Messiah is going to be there, but it's about a future better world. And the edut and the chukim and the pikudim are all the same. They're all the same. They give us understanding of that future better world or spiritual things. So, this is why I'm titling the teaching Jewish on Earth as it is in Jewish Heaven. Jewish on earth as it is in Jewish heaven. If you have the culture that God created on the earth, and you can add to that or you can make war on it. Those are your choices. You can add to that. You can add to that world being built on earth. Or you can make war on it. If that's on earth, then all the world can look at it and go, wow, I get how God is now. It's weird, but I like it. I want to know that God. And so what is in heaven, which is a Jewish world, comes down to earth in the form of the world of Judaism. That's why it's there. So the Torah gives us understanding of Yeshua, heaven, and the kingdom. The mitzvot give us insight about Yeshua, heaven, and the kingdom. The Mishpatim, we act out a living model of the kingdom. The Edut, they give us testimony, they speak to us about the future kingdom. The Chukim definitively show us about the future kingdom. Think about that. Give us super detail about the future kingdom. The Pikudim give us an understanding of the future kingdom. There's the kingdom. The Shabbat, God's Sabbath, God's seventh day. So if you want to know the day of the Lord, do the culture of the day of the Lord. That culture is going to be covering the whole earth in the day of the Lord. So why not do it now? Get started now. Don't think you're too old or too stupid or too whatever. Do it now. Our Father who is in heaven, holy is your name. Bring your kingdom. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our bread for the day. And forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Don't lead us into temptation, but deliver us from evil. We say this every single morning in the prayers. Every single morning. Many years ago, I was taught that Yeshua was quoting the Amidah. And so I started teaching that. It is wrong. It's not true. This is in the morning prayers. It says, right after it says, may it be your will, Lord, God of my fathers, to accustom us to study your Torah and to make us cleave to your mitzvot. Then it says, do not bring us into sin, nor into transgression, or iniquity, or temptation, or scorn. And may the evil inclination have no mastery over us. Keep us far from an evil person, an evil companion. It's just a lot more words, and this is like the Ten Commandments summation of the 613 words. It's just a shorter version of the same thing. This is said every morning. Blessed are you, Lord, who bestows bountiful kindness on your people Israel. And all the rest of the morning prayers basically say, bring your kingdom. Our Father, who is in heaven, your name is holy. Kadoshu, 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 Kadoshu. Holy is he, holy is he, holy is he. Holy. It says it over and over and over again. And then it says, bring your kingdom. How? By me doing. And that's what all the prayers say. By me doing. So this, it's not some new thing that Yeshua came up with. Oh, the Pharisees came and said, oh, teach us how to pray. The disciples, came to Yeshua and said, Yeshua, oh, Jesus, teach us how to pray. And so he came up with this amazing thing. That's nonsense. That's not what happened here. What they were saying was, what's the important stuff in the prayers that we're doing? Because they're already doing them. They're Jews. And he says, this is the important thing. In the morning that you say, basically you're saying, our Father who's in heaven, Kadoshu, holy is he. Bring your kingdom. What's the kingdom? The day of the Lord. Your will be done here among us. Let me do your will, just like it is in heaven. It's done in heaven, so let's do it here. And what is it? The things that God created and gave to Israel to do. the culture of heaven, the culture of the kingdom, the culture of Judaism. It's pretty simple. It's not deep. So we want to establish the kingdom culture, which is Judaism, to live as if the kingdom is here now. You probably are familiar with this concept from the New Testament, to live as if the kingdom is here now. The only problem is Christians don't know what to picture when they say the kingdom. So they say as if the kingdom is here now. What's that? Oh, there's Christ on the throne. Well, no, it's so detailed. And you can see it in the Chokim. And you can see it in the Edut. And you can see it in the Pikudim. You can see it in the Mishpatim. That's where we see it. We see it in the Torah. We see it in the mitzvot. That's where it's seen. So you can have a lot of details about the kingdom so that you can help live the kingdom right now. In Luke 17, 20 through 21, it says he was questioned by the Pharisees. I don't know if you know this, but Yeshua was a Pharisee. It's kind of like, I mean, if you want to picture it like, Democrats and Republicans, if you want to do that, I wouldn't suggest it, but if you want to do that, fine. Kind of like parties, like the Pharisees, they're like the real righteous Jews, and the Sadducees were the priests who would love some cash. They gonna get theirs, you know what I'm saying? They gonna get what's theirs. And they were after money, and they were greedy, and they were not spiritual at all. Well, Yeshua was a Pharisee. He was an ultra, if you want to put it in these words, an ultra-Orthodox Jew, if you want to say it like that. He kept all the Torah. Why? Because he was the Torah. So, the Pharisees, that means his brothers, his clan, his fellow Republicans, if you want to think of it like that, his brothers asked him when the kingdom of God was coming. Now that tells us a lot. That tells us they didn't know this. They didn't know this. They were stupid. They were ignorant of this very, very simple thing. Why? Because they were living like you probably live. And I'm sorry, but it's true. They were looking at the Bible as a book of laws and commandments, and they missed it. They didn't just miss Jesus. They missed this. When the kingdom is coming. They couldn't say in the year 6001 at Rosh Hashanah. They couldn't say that. So they asked him, when is the kingdom coming? And look what he answered. He doesn't tell them in the year 6001 at Rosh Hashanah, you idiots. He tells them this. He says, the kingdom of God is not coming with signs that can be observed. Really? Then why does everybody read Matthew 24 and say signs of the times? Those are the words of Christ in red, aren't they? And everybody says, oh, the signs of the end, the signs. Jesus said this is the sign of the end. Well, here he says it doesn't come with signs. So take your pick. This Jesus or the other one in Matthew 24. Which one are you going to believe? So he's lying either way. Or he's saying something you don't understand. You cannot have it both ways. It's very simple. He's saying what I'm saying. The kingdom, you're supposed to be living it here now. It's not, you guys are looking for the thing to come. That's not what this is about. It's not like signs that are going to tell you when it's coming, that you can see with your eyes. And they're not going to say, oh, look, here it is, there it is, woo, the kingdom's coming. For behold, the kingdom of God is betochem, betochecha, in your midst. Now he's quoting Exodus 25:8, which says, Ve'asu li mikdash v'shachanti betocham. Let them construct a sanctuary for me so I can dwell inside of them. He's saying the kingdom, it's supposed to be inside of you. And you live it, and you can see it, and you get it. Now you can believe me or not, but if you don't, you are stuck with a huge hypocrisy on the part of Jesus, a huge contradiction on the part of Jesus, a huge lie told from the mouth of Christ. Or you can look at it very simply, that he's a Jew talking to Jews about a Jewish subject and rebuking them for not knowing that they're supposed to be living the kingdom now. That's what the purpose of Judaism is. So I would encourage you to get a prayer book. I don't have my cell phone here. I have the prayers, all the prayers, the daily prayers on my cell phone. And so does my wife. In fact, I think she's the one who showed me. And you can get it. You can stick it on your phone, do the prayers in the morning. I need a book. I need a book. I don't want to get too tied to cell phones and computers and stuff like that. They're helpful tools, but we need books. So get yourself a siddur and start doing the daily prayers. Start doing the morning prayer. And listen, just add a little bit. Just add a little. I'm 60 years old, and I feel like I just got my second wind. Like I'm learning. I can almost do all the morning prayers driving to work in the morning from memory now. I'm about 70% there. That makes me really happy. And I can feel God's presence when I do it. I didn't, when I'm just kind of slugging through at the beginning, trying to memorize this stuff and figure out what it means. But then when I can see it, I figure out what it means, and I can understand it, then it just kind of come easy. And I can feel God's presence, and I can get revelation a lot quicker, which I do. Things are coming easier. Physically, maybe not so. But actually physically a lot too. I'm able to do things I never was able to do before, physically. But, our life seems to be crumbling around us. But that's okay. That's okay. So I would encourage you to start living the kingdom culture that's in heaven. Let it be reflected as a shadow in your life now. Shabbat Shalom.